Hello and welcome to the Humans versus Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Dan Haylett. Today, I am super excited about the show as I get to talk all things retirement with author, speaker, and renowned expert on retirement lifestyle design, all the way from Toronto, Canada, Mike Drak. Mike, a very, very warm welcome to the Humans versus Retirement podcast.
Thank you, Dan. I'm happy to be here. I'm a big fan of yours. I've been following your work, so I'm excited to talk to you about things today.
Vice versa. We're going to get into your wonderful books, and I'm a massive fan of your work too. We hit it off immediately. We connected on LinkedIn, the wonders of social media. We had a conversation 5 or 6 weeks ago, pre your fishing trip that you take annually, which I'm sure we can talk about. We hit it off immediately because when we first spoke those few months ago, like your passion, your experience, your knowledge about all of the non-financial elements of retirement was a huge common bond that we had. So kind of me getting into the books that you've written. So 3 wonderful books, Mike. The latest one, Longevity Lifestyle by Design. Your first book, which was Victory Lap Retirement, and then Retirement Heaven and Hell. Those 3 books, which links will be into the show notes, are, I think, must reads for everybody thinking about retirement. So yeah, I can't wait to dive into this conversation. So Mike, you contribute to a wonderful digital media hub called Baby Boomer for Baby Boomers, called Booming Encore, as well as, I think you're the go-to retirement life expert for a number of other high-profile blogs and organizations. So it puts you in such a wonderful position to have this conversation. And the reason why you're in such a wonderful position is because I think of your background and what you personally went through, during the last 10, 15 years. And I'd love for you to share your story and journey with the listeners, because I think it will resonate with any potential experiences that they're facing at the moment, or maybe thinking about, some of the issues that they're thinking about going forward. So I'd love for you to kind of share that story with us.
Well, I'm kind of embarrassed about my story, Dan, because it didn't work out the way I thought it would. I thought retirement would be easy. I thought retirement was a no-brainer. I worked in the banking industry for 38 years in total, and my wife's an investment advisor as well in Toronto. So we had all this knowledge and we were guiding clients and things like that, really helping them save as much money as possible for retirement. I think that was our primary goal. And then when it happened to me, when I retired, I was surprised because I failed miserably at it. And I started suffering from retirement shock, which wasn't a lot of fun. And I couldn't understand why that was happening, because I believed that retirement had to do with saving as much money as possible. That was the goal for everyone. And I found out that retirement is much more complicated than that. And there's a lot of other challenges that we face that we're not aware of, like, finding new purpose, finding a good reason to get out of bed in the morning, and finding productive, meaningful things to do in retirement, things like that. So, no, I had a rough time for the longest time. And I'm not the only one that suffers from this thing, because research has shown that up to 1 in 3 retirees will suffer from retirement shock, also known as depression. My father suffered from it, and I had a good friend die from it. He ended up drinking himself to death because none of us could cope with all these changes in our life, and we didn't know how to handle it.
I think it's so important, to recognize the challenges of that transition from a career, because like you say, I think we float into it in a way that we think it's a money problem. So once the money thing is sorted out, everything else will take care of itself. And like you, I can't, it couldn't be further from the truth, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that was the thing I woke up to finally. And I said, wow, like, whoever thought? It's so much more complicated. It's not just something you can fall into and expect to have a happy retirement because you happen to have a lot of money. It's so much more involved with that. And there's another key areas that you have to address. And I learned from that, but I had no idea about it before. And it was the weirdest thing, because I really wanted to leave my work. I reached a point where I was stressed out. I was working a lot of hours, and I said I had enough, and I got to get out of here. And so I was happy to retire. I thought, geez, it's going to be a wonderful thing, but it was anything but. And within a few months, I found myself in retirement hell, and it wasn't a lot of fun being there. And what really bothered me was that no one could understand what I was going through. Like my wife, she's pretty sharp. She didn't understand it. And none of my friends could understand it because everyone automatically thinks, well, how can Mike be unhappy because he doesn't have to work anymore? And the reason I was unhappy, was because I wasn't working anymore. So that was one thing that I really woke up to, and I finally figured out what was causing it. We can go through that if you like.
Yeah. What was the first book, Mike, that you wrote?
The first one was Victory Lap
Victory Lap.
Retirement, and
Yeah, I thought,
it was written as I was trying to figure out this thing I was experiencing and how I could come up with solutions that would work for me. And that went on to Retirement Heaven or Hell. I got into the real meat of it, what was bothering me, and what I needed to do to recover from that transition to a successful retirement. So it was all based on my feelings and experiences and what I found out over time. I read every retirement book I could get my hands on during that period. And I was really disappointed because, Dan, 99% of them only dealt with the money side of retirement. And none of the books, gave me any guidance with, well, this is what you're going to do in retirement. Here's some options for you and things like this. And so there was a noted absence of that. And that's why I struggled too, because there was no good guidance out there available.
I think what I really appreciate about what, kind of the journey that you've been on and the experiences that you've shared is your openness in kind of, getting this out into the world for the benefit of everybody. And your last book, the Longevity Lifestyle by Design, not only is that your opinions and some of your learnings, but there's research baked into this now. There's evidence that you've come across having wrote for and spent time with many other retirees and, in your work trying to impact them, which is now shaping this, I think, in a lot more years. You said there's now lots of research around retirement shock. There's lots of research around how losing our identity can kind of, make us fall into those, the stuff behind retirement shock, which you dive into. I'd love to just get your opinion on that specifically. What is your definition of retirement shock? What are some of the signs to look out for people that kind of maybe just retire? And is there ways that we can kind of get thinking slightly differently to help us get out of that?
Okay, so the signs to look for if you suspect someone's being impacted by retirement shock is that they'll just spend a lot of time sitting around moping. They'll spend a lot of time sitting in front of the TV, but they can't find anything interesting to watch, even though they might have 500 stations to choose from. People that used to love to do certain things like going out and riding a bike or traveling, and they don't want to do these things anymore. Basically, they just want to sit there, isolate themselves, and feel sorry for themselves and mope. And it's hard to break out of that by yourself because no one understands what you're going through. And that's where I spent a lot of time and research to say, okay, what's causing this to happen to me? What's driving me to feel like this? And how can I recover from it and get out of it as quickly as possible? Because I'm sure you read many stories these days. People, retirees actually end up committing suicide because it's so hard for them to kind of dig out of that hole they find themselves in. They don't understand why that is happening to them. They can't understand because they might have a lot of money. They had a great life or a successful career before. And all of a sudden, they're sitting there and they're feeling sorry for themselves and they can't understand why. And what is happening is, and I was surprised to learn this, is that we all have these basic fundamental needs. And, their needs for like a need for survival, security, a need for connection, social interaction, a need for growth. a need for giving, a need for structure and routine, a need for variety in our lives. Most of these needs were being satisfied through the work we did before. I never thought about that. And then what happens is when we leave that work behind, we need to find new ways of satisfying these needs of ours, or we're going to be in trouble. And you're going to end up suffering from retirement shock. And the interesting thing is that we're all born with these same needs. The only difference between people is some needs might be stronger than others, but these needs are with us for the duration. So just because you're retired doesn't mean these needs are going to go away. And when you leave work behind, you have to find new ways of satisfying these needs. Or again, you're going to be in trouble and you're going to be miserable. And that's exactly what happened to me. It made so much sense when I finally figured it out. And one of the easiest ways of meeting these needs is by working part-time in retirement, because you're bringing that structure and you're bringing the social connection, all those things back into your life. But the proviso is, and I keep telling people, is make sure you find part-time work that you love to do. That's interesting, that you have some passion for. And when you do that, life, you take it to a whole new level, and it's just wonderful. And thank God I'm finally there, Dan.
Yeah, you've definitely found your purpose. I think I can hear it in your writing. That I don't read it, I can hear it, if that makes sense. You can hear the passion in the words, definitely. I think there's a couple of observations that I'd like to make there and circle back to a few things you said. Like I think in amongst kind of retirement aged people, let's say 55 plus in the 60s, there's lots of things on the rise in those people, and there's lots of things happening at a more rapid rate than other age groups, such as depression, suicide, divorce. You kind of mention these things and without kind of going majorly deep, but I think a lot of that comes back to this, the loss of the things that gave us the foundational elements to our being, and I think particularly in the UK, the fastest rising age group for divorce is people in their 60s.
Sure.
And I think that, I suppose one of the things I want to kind of come back to is, and I know that you're not a fan of, and for all the absolute right reasons that I agree with, this kind of cliff edge retirement thing. It's stop work one day, on the sofa the next, because that can lead to real issues. So the bit about work, and I think associating work with money, we need to kind of maybe we need to get rid of that association, because if you're financially independent, work doesn't have to pay you, but it can. And so really, how do you think about crafting the process of retirement and starting to think about what you'd want post full-time work in, as you quite delightfully put it, in your second life? A lot of people kind of wait, they do it 3 months out, but I think that's far too late, right? We need to start crafting this well before that.
This takes time, and I suggest 2 to 3 years before you retire, you should start to sit down and go through it and design a retirement lifestyle that will work for you. It's important to understand that not all retirees are the same, and what kind of lifestyle will work for me might not work for you. It has to be customized based on your strongest needs again, and your wants, and it takes a lot of work to do it. But once it's done, you have something definite to retire to, something to look forward to, and yeah, life is pretty good. But you mentioned about depression and people and divorce rates and things like that. And what I found interesting was the pandemic taught us a lot about retirement.
Absolutely.
And the same thing with divorce rates happened during the pandemic, because when restraints were lifted, a lot of couples divorced because they couldn't handle the increased togetherness. Well, guess what happens in retirement? There's a lot of togetherness, and you don't have these jobs anymore. So you're together a lot more, and people have a hard time handling that. And another problem is in the book, we identify different types of retirees based on their strongest needs. So if you're two different types of retirees, like one might be comfort oriented Maybe they just want to hang around the house and take it easy and not travel and just enjoy a simple life. And your spouse might be someone that wants to, experience new things, travel to different countries, take up new hobbies, maybe Zumba or ballroom dancing, and you don't want any part of it. Well, guess what? You're going to have a problem.
Mm.
And this is something you need to work through. And it happens a lot.
Mm.
And it's just having respect for one another's needs and to say, okay, I understand that. I'll accommodate those, but you have to accommodate my needs too. So we can have our own separate lives and then have a life where we do things together. And that's so important to understand. And that's, what we tried to bring out in the book. You have to understand what is happening to you when you retire and
I
these
think
challenges that are one will face.
absolutely. I think it's such an important point, one that's raised on a number of the episodes of the show. And I think, as you rightly said, Mike, this is about creating probably 3 journeys or 3 visions, individual ones and a joint one. But I think,
Right.
The trouble I find is that it comes back to the money thing. There's often been a dominant spouse when it comes to the finances. And that
Right.
dominant spouse then often gets dominant in the non-financial things. It's kind of like, right, so I've been dominant on the money, so therefore I'm going to start to tell you what the retirement looks like, and you're just going to come along for the ride. And I think, again, that's really dangerous. And it only is a strong word, but, communication, openness, and conversations can get round this, right? Because it doesn't have to be like that. And so I think it's such a crucial point. If anyone that is thinking about entering into the period of crafting their retirement, and you're married or you've got a long-term partner, this has to be together. It has to be together.
Right. But a lot of men ignore that fact.
Yep, absolutely.
A lot of men will just craft their own lifestyle based on their own wants, and they'll forget about their partner. And that's when problems happen. So, you have to be careful about it. And it comes down to respect and open communication. End of the day.
I think what's a really good place to go now is, you mentioned it a little bit there about that. You've discovered 5 types of retirees that I would really want us to kind of explore, because I think it comes off the back of this conversation. I think understanding what type of retiree you are and what type of retiree your partner or spouse is a really crucial element to crafting the vision and living the life that you want to live. Can we delve into that? You've mentioned a couple of them, but I think all of them are so relevant and so great. And I would imagine everyone listening will go, yeah, I'm one of those. As we go through them.
All right. Let's start with the comfort-oriented retiree, people I refer to as relaxers. Their probably biggest goal in life was to reach the retirement finish line. And now that they've reached that, they'll never work again. They just want to enjoy a simple life and take it easy. They don't want to take any risks. They want to stay in their comfort zone, do the things that they're used to. They hate change. They just want to keep doing the same things over and over again. And that type of lifestyle works for them. And there's a lot of them out there. Mm-hmm. These are the people that would never read my books because they don't need to. They know exactly what they want, and they're going to keep doing that. Every day will look the same, and they're okay with that. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it works for them, and it does. So you have to be careful. I can't look down on them and say, well, that's a bad lifestyle. Sure, it's maybe a lifestyle that won't work for me, but it works for them, and I have to respect that. And there's a lot of people out there like that. And my mother was one too. She was a comfort-oriented retiree, and she enjoyed life. And her biggest probably purpose was to take care of her friends and family and make sure everyone was safe, right? So that worked for her. But I could never live like that. I'm a growth-oriented retiree. I need to keep learning and experiencing new things. I need to keep setting goals for myself. When people refer to me as retired, it drives me crazy because I'm anything but. I don't know exactly what I am, but I'm not retired. And I need identity around something. So what did I do? I became an author, a public speaker. I attempted to become an Iron Man and things like that because I need to keep challenging myself, keep taking risks, because that's where the fun is for people like me. And so they're an exciting group of people. I refer to them as retirement rebels because they threw out the old retirement rule book and they're doing all these wild and crazy things. Like you read these stories, I find them fascinating. There's a story about Eleanor. She wanted to celebrate her 100th birthday. So what did she decide to do? Try skydiving for the first time. I can imagine her talking to her friends at the retirement home, saying, "You know what? I think tomorrow I'm going to go out and try skydive. You want to come along with me?" And then I'll be going, "Oh no, I don't want any part of that."
Yeah.
She went out and did it,
Yeah.
and she's done it a few times since. And what I find interesting is that there's another lady in Australia who beat Eleanor's record because she did her first skydive at age 100. So you have these people, they're challenging each other. They're looking at these things that other retirement rebels are doing, and they're trying to one up them and do all these wild and crazy things. And it's just, I have so much fun reading about them. And these are the people, too, I refer to as late bloomers. What they did was they left work behind and they decided to try something completely new and different. These are the people you see opening new businesses and things like that, or become master athletes and compete in their 80s, 90s, and even hundreds. I find their stories fascinating. I get very excited about them. And then the other ones that I have a lot of respect for are the givers. These are people that have a strong need to give back and help others. And we saw examples of this during the pandemic. You know, people would volunteer to work at hospitals, at charity things, and maybe they'd volunteer to help out their elderly neighbors who were too scared to go shopping for themselves for fear of catching a virus. So you see these people, giving back and doing so many good things. And, those are the ones that get me excited also. And then you have the unicorns, which can be a combination of both growth and giver. And that's kind of where I fall. I found that as I go through retirement, it's not so much about, making money anymore. It's about finding ways to give back. And I have a lot of fun doing that. And that led to the decision of giving our third book, Longevity Lifestyle by Design, away for free to everyone, because we want to help as many people as possible. And that's part of that giving back. And those are all needs of mine. And, these needs are driving each of these different types of retirees. So it's important to understand the differences and to understand what's driving certain individuals in retirement, because it makes retirement lifestyle design that much easier.
It just fascinates me. We had a conversation before we hit record just today, and definitely think there is an uprising and a definite trend that the modern day retiree is much more growth focused and growth orientated than past generations. I think we are in that first real generation of retirement rebels. That kind of first generation, because I think when I listen to the people I work with, they talk about their parents and their grandparents very differently to the way that they want to retire. So, their parents and their grandparents had maybe not as much money, but the money they had was they didn't have pots of money. They had, final salary or defined benefit pensions that give them a regular income. Right. So they designed their life differently. There wasn't the world wasn't as small as it is now for generations past. The traveling and the experiences that you can now do, and how easy the barriers to entry for businesses and creatives and all of that stuff is so small now that I think, we need to now really understand how those growth orientated retirees work, how they what their emotions are, how we can start to communicate with them and understand them better, because that's where I think a lot of these people are going to, a lot of people that want to retire are going to fit squarely into that into that camp.
Well, yeah, and to me, I got to be careful how I say this. I find those to be the interesting types. Those are the people I want to deal with because they get me excited and they show me what's possible. The game changer here was longevity. Way back when, people would retire and they wouldn't expect to live that long, and they would adopt this sedentary lifestyle, which was a killer in disguise. And we've woken up to it that we say, okay, we could have 20, 30 plus years to spend in retirement. And that's a lot of time. And what are we going to do to give us purpose? What are we going to do to get us excited and, get us happy and things like that? And these are what the growth oriented people focus on, and saying, hey, life is far from over. It's my turn to have some fun, and I'm going to have fun doing this. And that's when they start breaking the rules. And it's so exciting to see what some of these people are accomplishing. And they're having so much fun doing it. And then again, happy people live longer than unhappy people. That was proven by the famous nun study. And even from the blue zones, you see all these people that live a long life. They have a strong sense of purpose throughout that life. And many times that purpose includes some form of work. The work might be taking care of the grandkids, like many people did during the pandemic, right? That gave them a strong sense of purpose, and it benefited their kids, right? And I think we're getting back to more of that, which is kind of interesting to see.
Absolutely. And I think, what it's definitely changed the game. The longevity thing, it's kind of, as I say, going back to the conversations I have with the people I work with, they're talking about their grandparents, but that was a 5-year retirement. You basically worked until you worked until you couldn't work anymore physically, and then you went and stopped and just declined. And so it's very different now. But also, I think what people are, and I think where the rebelness is coming in, is people are now, I think, much more aware of the difference between health span and lifespan. And I think they're going, medicine is keeping us alive longer, which means that, the longevity's there, but we still have our health span to consider, i.e. we need to take advantage whilst we're probably within those first stages of retirement, because although we might be alive longer, we may not be able to do all the things that are in our head when we're in our 80s, notwithstanding that there are people at age 100 doing skydives. So there are, there are people are breaking the rules all over the place. But I think in general, I think that's what people are going now. They're going, well, I know I'm living longer. However, I want to do stuff. And then that's where the issues lie. It's the issue between purpose, passion, what they want to do, how they want to do it, and then the fact that they know that they're living longer. So the kind of financial element has to support something up here,
Sure.
And that's where and I think that's where that group of people that you said, Mike, is truly exciting, because they absolutely want to live life to the maximum, and they absolutely need some guidance and help to kind of do that. And when they get that guidance and help, and it does change their lives, that's where kind of my eyes light up, and I really kind of see the impact that we can have on those type of people.
No, you made some very good points. And one thing we do focus on is narrowing that gap between health span and lifespan. I think AgeWorks, Ken Dykewald did a study, and they showed the gap in the States is 12.4 years. So, imagine you have this 12.4 years tacked on the end of your life, where you're going to spend it in poor health and you can't do the things that you love to do. So what we're doing is we're coaching people to say, okay, wake up. Instead of sitting on a couch, get yourself to a gym, start doing weight training, resistance training, get in a pool and start swimming, do some aerobic activity, get your 10,000 steps in, because we want to have a healthy, long life. And we want to reduce that. I refer to it as pushing back your best before date right to the end, maybe the day before your final day hits. That's the goal that we all want. The other thing you picked up was retirement cash flow. Like, if you want to do all these great things, it costs money. And how are we going to generate that kind of money? Well, that's where it makes sense to go back and maybe work part-time
Mm.
To generate some of it. But the thing is, in retirement, you can pick a job that maybe doesn't pay as well as your former job did, because you don't need that much really to get by, in addition to your other retirement assets. So that's where you kind of come up with this lifestyle that will work and that's sustainable, because you don't want to go through a lifestyle decline. You don't want to experience that too. You're pinned down. You can't do these things that you like to do because through a lack of money.
Yeah.
So those are things we're very cognizant of and we're focused on.
I think this leads beautifully on to kind of what you've observed through your writing and your speaking and your coaching with people in relation to what retirees lose and how to think about replacing it in a way that fits beautifully in line with, you know, their thought process around what they want to do and what's important to them. And I think that would lead on to then probably realizing that working in retirement is something that makes a huge amount of sense, because you've identified the things that you're going to lose. You kind of know how to replace them. Couple that with a new vision about what gets you out of bed in the morning and what lights your fire. I think for the first time in a number of years, you've got the opportunity to marry those things up. And I know we're both big fans of Ikigai, which kind of can help you marry those things up, right? So I'd love to get your thoughts around what you think people lose and how we start to think about replacing them and some of the mechanics of doing that.
Well, you know, what we lose is basically what I said before. We lose, you know, structure and routine. We've always had that throughout our lives. Even when we went to school, we had structure and routine. And all of a sudden that's thrown away. And then we lose social connection, which is so very important to us. And that's one of the big dangers, is many people end up isolating themselves in retirement. And that's a danger in terms of longevity. You want to die sooner, you know, isolate yourself and see what happens to you. And, you know, we experienced it during the pandemic too, when we couldn't go out and see people. And we couldn't hug them. We couldn't hold their hand. And Zoom calls just, you know, couldn't make up the difference, right? It's just not the same. And the other thing is, it's very important, a source of meaning in our lives, a source of value in our lives, a sort of being relevant, being a contributor in our lives. We lose that too when we retire, and we have to find a way of replacing it. I've had many people tell me they feel irrelevant in retirement. They feel like they're starting to become invisible, that no one sees them anymore. No one hears them anymore. And it's sad to hear people talk about that. And so those are things that we can switch around by finding new sources of purpose. And I refer to work as not just paid work, but volunteer work as well. It's still work at the end of the day. One you get paid for, one that you don't get paid for. But they're both very meaningful activities that people are starting to wake up to. But, you know, the struggle is trying to connect people to a good source of volunteer work. You know, you don't want to be stuck in some basement somewhere with no windows, you know, licking envelopes, sending out requests for donations or things like that. You want to be able to see the impact you're making, the impact on people's lives. Like a good example is Habitat for Humanity. You go and help build a house that you know a deserving couple are going to live in. That's very meaningful volunteer work, and it helps keep people alive, and it gives them that purpose. Everyone needs a good reason to get out of bed in the morning. Purpose. Our old purpose used to be making money, working, so we could take care of our families. That's what got us out of bed all those mornings, even when we didn't want to, because that was our driving force. And when the kids leave home or we leave the job behind, what's our new purpose? We need to find it. And that's something a lot of people struggle with. The reason I also decided to read the books was at one point I was a retirement coach, and I would have all these people come in to talk to me, and they were all suffering from retirement shock. And I felt like the exorcist trying to get all these demons out of the people. And I said, this is crazy. And it was so hard because it took a lot out of me, because I could feel for them. I was there. I was them. I've been through it. And I said, no, we got to nip this thing in the bud. Let's educate people and create awareness before they actually retire, and we can help them avoid that. And that's been my, I guess you could say, my calling now, is to help these people avoid what I went through.
Yeah. And what a calling that is, right?
Oh, it's exciting. It's like your calling too. You're helping an awful lot of people, save and prepare for eventual retirement. And, you understand all these challenges they're going to be facing. They're going to be facing, and you're helping them prepare for it and come up with a good plan for themselves. So no, it's great work to do.
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things that I really like to talk to people about, and you mentioned it, is this. I think there's too much focus on what people are retiring from and not what they're retiring to. And I think simple conversations about, what they're going to do, what it means, aligning with some of their purposes and passions. Because I do think people have somewhat maybe squirreled away some of their dreams and desires, right, to a lesser or greater degree. I want to feel like we can encourage that to come out and start to dream again and start to think, because I think more and more and more people, particularly these growth orientated retirees that want to continuously learn and educate and grow mentally, spiritually, that work provides so much stuff, but it doesn't mean that it has to be the thing that you've left. It can be the thing that you really want to do. And I think just getting that out of people is really exciting, because you can see it lights them up. It's like, well, I never thought I could do this thing that I've always wanted to do. But now I feel like I can, and that lights people up. And I think in your book, Mike, you've got a great bit at the back where you've obviously curated and found so much resource for people. And there's not enough, but there's a lot of resource out there. And I think people don't quite understand what's out there. There's, organizations like Men's Shed, and as you said, kind of volunteering organizations. There's wonderful blogs that you're a contributor to. There's better books now that are out there. There's people talking about this stuff. So I think that is a big thing. And the sense that it's coming around is that there's more and more resource for people to tap into and find some of these organizations and resources that will help them through this journey.
It's there's a couple of things I'm excited about, and one of the big ones is these new transition courses some of the universities are coming up with, where they'll bring retirees in, and you can sign up for this course. And over the course of 12 months, you can figure out what your new purpose will be. And they help facilitate that. So what you do is you join together with, say, 40 other retiree students, and you're all working on defining new purpose for yourself. And at the end of the program, you actually go up and present what your plan is for the future.
So cool.
So maybe your plan is to start a new business, or your plan is to create this new type of volunteer work that you're going to pursue for the rest of your life. And I find that so exciting. And what I really like is, because when I started it and I decided, okay, I'm going to write books and whatnot, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to create a website. I didn't know how to, sell books on social media and things like that. And what these universities are doing, they're going to provide these supporting courses to help people do that. And it makes it so much easier. So really, they're connecting these people and they're helping them find new purpose. And so when they actually start retirement, they can hit the ground running. I think it's so wonderful. What concerns me is when I talk to retirees with my wife, some of my wife's clients, the first question I ask them is, why are you retiring? And few people have a good reason. They think, oh, I'm supposed to retire now.
Yeah. I'm 65,
Mike,
I should stop.
Yeah, 65 government pension. I got to retire. No, that's not a good reason.
Yeah.
Don't you like your work anymore? Are you stressed out at your job? Do you need to get away from it for health reasons? That makes sense to me.
Mm.
But just to automatically think you have to retire, it's not a good answer.
Mm.
And then the second question I like to ask is to say, what's your vision for retirement? What are you going to do in retirement? And that's when you get that deer in the headlight look, and they kind of go, we're going to travel more, or we're going to spend more time with the grandkids. Well, I'm sorry. That's not going to fill up your day in your weeks and your years. You got to think these things through. And that's just like a lack of thought, a lack of planning. And that's the scary thing.
Mm.
And, the third question is, what are you going to do with your remaining time?
Mm.
What are you going to do for the next 30 years? What's your plan? Again, silence. And, these are the things that we help people deal with, because these are big questions. These are the big rocks of retirement that few people think about.
I think I heard a few years ago a quote, and it just sat with me because I think it's so true. I think most people will spend more time planning a 2-week holiday or vacation than they do spending a 20-year retirement. And I think it's so true, right? It's so true. And I think we need to, I think in order to create the positive, we need to address the negative, because I think too many people think it is just a walk in the park. But if we address all the reasons why it isn't before it happens, and then help people realize how they can get over that, then the 20-30 years is going to be a joy for them to be in. It's not all bed of roses, and there are challenges that will come about, right? But I think, lack of planning, I see it so many times. I see that what you said, people go, we need to start planning for retirement. I'm 62. Oh, why? And I asked that question, why do you want to retire? Oh, because I'm 62. And I feel, well, what?
That's a good reason.
And you go, what? And I asked the question, do you not like what you do then? They go, oh, no, I really love it. Oh, well, this don't compute. I don't understand then. What's this about? So like, think about going, well, if time is more important to you and you want to do, you've got some things that you want to do and you need more time, well, then go to 4 days a week or 3 days a week, because your employer is absolutely open to those conversations, by the way. They don't want to lose people. Exactly.
I'm sorry. You got me all wound up now, Dan.
Let's go there. Let's go there, Mike.
No, but you see, people, they're so passive. You love to do your work. Well, keep doing it. Maybe not for as many hours.
Yep.
But keep doing what you love to do. It's crazy to retire from doing something that you love to do. But you have to be engaged. You have to be involved. You got to go talk to the employer and say, let's make a deal that works for both of us. So we both win on this deal. And I don't know, people are afraid to have these conversations. I don't understand it. No. It drives me nuts, because when they have these conversations, they tend to work out.
Absolutely.
Because it's, like I said, it's a win-win. I'll tell you one story that, it's part of what got me doing what I do. Is I dealt with a lot of small business owners back in commercial banking. And I remember, one person that, was able, in his 60s, he sold his business for a lot of money. And he thought, oh, geez, life's going to be wonderful now. I got all this money in the bank. I said, what are your plans for retirement? And he said, I don't know. I'll just kind of figure it out as it goes. And I said, boy, this guy's going to struggle. And he did. And he ended up passing away within a couple of years of retiring. Because what happened is he spent all his time at work. He didn't have any other activities or hobbies or anything like that. His work was his hobby. His work was his passion and his purpose. That was it. And when he gave up that work, he sold it off, he had nothing to fill it. And then his needs weren't being met and things like that. And things started to fall apart for him, because that lack of purpose is a killer. And it will hurt a lot of people. And that's why it's important. That's why I have this, passion in me to go out and talk to people about it. Because it happens more often than you think. There's so many successful people that have made a lot of money that will struggle terribly in retirement, because they can't find an alternative source of good purpose for themselves. That's a sad thing to see. And it's through a lack of preparation and awareness again.
Yep.
And this is where I'm looking for the financial planning industry and the investment advisors to educate their clients. This is part of what I do, and I'm hoping to make change. But it's not easy to make change in the financial services industry. And that's why I'm so happy when I see individuals like you, doing the great things you do and helping all these people, because they need a lot of help and guidance.
Yeah, but absolutely. I think one of the things that I try and get across to people is that, I mean, I work with amazing people that have had long, successful careers, either owned their own business or, had careers that they've, that they've loved and been very successful at. And you've accumulated years of knowledge and wisdom and understanding that you need to continue to give back to the world, right? Whether you mentor young people, whether you go and do consultative work. I think too many people downplay because they feel like, oh, I've got to an age, I can't contribute anymore. Actually, the world needs you more than ever. Your skills are so vital to contributing to society. And also one of the other things I think that, research is out there now that if you as a 65, let's say 60, 65-year-old, hang out with some 20, 25, 30-year-olds, actually that's a really good place to be. You don't have to hang out and socialize with everybody in your age group. Be diverse, socialize with younger people, and therefore those social connections can only make this better and happier. And we love giving back and we loved it. So I think it's such an important, we need to give, people that are retiring from a career need to give themselves more credit for the things that they've got in their heads and the ability for them to then use that stuff to give back. Whether you get paid for it or not is irrelevant, but use that stuff to give back because that can generate some of the purpose that you need.
So that is something that my father experienced when he retired. Like I said before, he suffered from retirement shock for the longest time until he went out and found himself a part-time job. And when I found about the type of part-time job he found, I laughed because it was so crazy. He got a part-time job delivering pet food for one of those retail pet food companies. And his job was to, pick up the pet food orders and put them in a van, drive around town 2 days a week and deliver this pet food to people that couldn't come into the store. But as soon as he started doing that job, he was a changed person. The retirement shock was gone because he found himself new purpose. And when I think about his former job, where he managed about 50 people in a large corporation, an accounting department, it was such a huge change. But it was just a ticket for him. And what the icing on the cake is that the young man who owned the store was struggling. It was his first business. And my father turned into a mentor for him. So he used his accounting skills and his sales skills, and he taught the young man to run a successful business. And when the young man thanked him, that was like $1 million for my father.
Absolutely.
Talk about meaning. Talk about feeling valued. Talk about raising your self-esteem. Because he could use his old skills to help others. That's as simple as it is. It's exactly what you said.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful place for us to think about wrapping this up. We could talk for about another 52 minutes. I'm just looking at the time here. So this has been so cool. Maybe there's a part 2 coming up once I finish your other 2 books and we can have a look, explore some of those. But I've got a couple of questions I'd love to ask you, Mike, just to kind of get some of your thoughts, short, rapid fire type stuff. So we go through this. You've already answered it a little bit, but what does Mike's retirement look like?
Mike's retirement is changing. I'm going more from making to giving. And, if you follow me, you can see there's a lot of things that I'm starting just to give away and contribute to help others, like giving away a free book. And there's a bunch of other things I'm going to be doing in the years ahead, because somehow I think we're all wired to give, and it just takes us a while to get there. And retirement is when your chance, when you can fulfill that important need of yours. And that's where I am. And I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Wonderful. Love that. What would be your number one tip? If I was sitting across the desk from you, let's kind of say you and your wife are my advisors and retirement coaches, and I'm sitting across the desk and we've established the money thing's fine. Right? We're not talking about the numbers or the spreadsheets anymore. What would be your number one tip to live a happy, healthy, and wealthy retirement?
I would use my retirement as a stepping stone to something better. So I'm not stopping. I'm not really retiring. I'm doing something else, something that's very meaningful to me, something that maybe I wanted to do when I was younger and never had a chance to because I had to work full time. So this opens a lot of doors for me. And this is what I talked about late bloomers. I'm a late bloomer. I'm doing things I never had a chance to do, and I'm having so much fun doing it. So it's a period of exploration. It's a period of creativity. It's a period for having a lot of fun. This is the payoff from working all those years. So take advantage of it. That's what I would tell people. And don't stop.
Absolutely. Mike, I think you've in that answer, you've answered my other question. So that's a wonderful place for us to finish. And I think if the listeners kind of do that rewind 30-second button, that last 30 seconds that you just said, I think is just a phenomenal takeaway for people that are listening here. So look, Mike, I cannot thank you enough for your time, your knowledge, your wisdom, your words. They've just been so good, and thank you for sharing all of that today. I've had such a great time and such a lot of fun.
So did I, Dan. I really enjoyed being on, and I like talking to people that get it, and obviously you get it well. So
I appreciate that. Links to all of Mike's books, the other resources, the great articles that he writes will all be in the show notes. And I encourage everybody, Mike's giving this stuff away now. So, The Longevity Lifestyle by Design is a wonderful book, one of the best retirement books that I've read. So I encourage everybody to go and get that and help Mike on his mission to impact as many retirees as possible. So that just leaves me to thank everybody once again for listening to the Humans versus Retirement podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you alongside us today. Until next time, take care.